skimping on the soil in the green stalk. Don't do it. Let me repeat that. Do not skimp on the soil that you put in the green stalk. You spend a decent amount of money. I'll admit it, I've been dreading this day. I am scared of my green stalks because I have neglected them all summer long and they have taken on a life of their own. So today we're going to be talking about why I neglected my poor green stalks in the first place and how that actually backfired on me. And then we're going to be talking about the 10 mistakes in reverse order that I have learned in my 3-year journey of growing in 5 green stalk towers. And then last but by no means least, we will maybe do a little bit of harvesting, and I'm going to finally dig out that potato tier that I have been dreading, really dreading, and you'll see why in a little bit. And if we haven't met before, my name is Tara and I garden in Northern California, Zone 9B, the beautiful Bay Area. And you may have found me because you're also a green stalk gardener, and you may have even watched my amazing tips video, which many people have watched and have found my channel because of. So thank you for that. So why exactly did I neglect my green stalks? Well, like I said, it was intentional, and it was because I've got a lot of friends that have bought green stalks thanks to my nudging them because I love them so much, but they've not been able to spend sufficient time on it, and as a result, the green stalks have just not been doing well for them and they've been disappointed. So I wanted to do this experiment to see just how much neglect a green stalk can take, and also maybe what plants can thrive in a little bit of neglect and what plants they should stay away from, and maybe what are some of the conditions we need to create in the green stalks which would still allow them to thrive in spite of neglect. So what exactly do I mean by neglect? Well, for one thing, I did not plan anything with these green stalks. Usually, I carefully design what I want to plant in them so that they are looking their best. I also did not refresh the soil. This is all last year's soil. Some of it actually has soil from the year before. And I did not add any granular fertilizer to it. And I kind of let the dead plants be. I did not really bother to remove them. But I did do a few things just to keep them alive. Number one, they are on automatic irrigation, so they did get watered on a regular basis. And then every once in a while, when I was fertilizing my other plants, maybe once a month or so, I'd come and give them a little bit of liquid fertilizer. And then if I did see any obvious empty pockets and I had some plants to spare, I might have tucked them in here or there. But other than that, I didn't really take care of my green stalks the way I usually do. Okay, so let's do a close-up and see what exactly happened as a result of this neglect. Number one, look at this green stalk. This had a few perennials in it. This is Creeping Charlie. It's a weed. And this is orange mint. This is rosemary. This is longevity spinach. You can see that these are all perennials that have absolutely taken over the green stalk. But they're not exactly looking healthy. Look at my rosemary. The leaves are so yellow. Look at the orange mint. It's just not looking great either. So everything's growing, but nothing is really thriving. I also do have a lot of empty pockets, which is not exactly ideal. And I have vegetables that I have not harvested. I actually discovered a large pepper this morning from a plant that I did not plant. So that came back. But again, it produced 1 pepper for me. This is a decent sized plant. I would have expected at least 3 or 4. A lot of plants went to seed, like this lettuce, and I kind of just let it be. The beauty of it, though, is that the birds absolutely love it. The broccoli that I planted last year and actually chopped down has regrown again. And I noticed actually this morning when I was looking at it, I got some broccoli coming back. So I guess that's okay, though it doesn't look very edible. I've got so many plants that are dead, have produced seed, but I'm just kind of letting it be. And then there were the potatoes. Well, they're in this tier, this bottom tier over here, and they have already come back once. So the plants died off. The potatoes that were in the tier regrew, produced another batch, and they died off. And I've just never ever harvested potatoes from this green stalk tower. But I know they're there. And so just overall, the green stalks are not looking great. They're definitely not the conversation piece that I am used to them being. Look at that. This is where the water is filled up at the top. It's just full of leaves, and I've neglected it. Now, some of you may be looking at this and say, hey, that's actually pretty good. Those green stalks are doing well. And I'd say they did okay. I wouldn't say they did amazing. They did okay. And the reason that they did okay is two reasons, actually. I have automatic irrigation, and that makes the difference of night and day with these green stalks. They need to be watered. They totally depend on you for water. And then the second reason why these green stalks did okay is because the soil that I initially put in it was just the best quality soil. It was light, fluffy, full of worm castings. And so those worms were actually creating fertility for them, even though I was neglecting them. But can it last another year with neglect? Absolutely not. So lots of lessons learned from this experience. And speaking of experiences, let's now talk about the top 10 mistakes, common mistakes that a lot of people make when they get their green stalks for the first time. I've made all of them, I've learned from all of them, and I want to share them with you so that hopefully you don't make the same mistakes that I did and that many of us green stalkers did. Green stalkers? I don't think that's a real word. Okay, mistake number 10, and that is planting fast-growing perennials, particularly like mint. Don't plant perennials that are going to last forever and ever in your green stock, because these things will grow, their roots will get root bound, they will take over the entire green stock tier, and they just won't thrive because the green stock tier, even the original, it's not a very large capacity. So if you want your perennials to thrive, don't put them in the green stock. Now, if you want to treat them like annuals or biennials, that's okay. If you're going to pull them out, refresh the soil, clean out the roots and replant them, that will work. But if you expect that it's a one-time plant and forget about it kind of thing, that just doesn't work. You do need to refresh the soil in your green stock at least once every 3 years or so. Give it a complete overhaul. Mistake number 9. Not setting up irrigation for your green stalks. Now, I installed irrigation. This actually is a DIY setup that I put in place. It's actually not that difficult to do, but you can actually purchase irrigation from GreenStalk as well. But if you've got neither, like I was the first year, I found that it was very, very hard to keep the green stalk properly hydrated. The soil in it tends to be light, fluffy, peat-based, even cocoa core-based, and it does tend to get hydrophobic in places if you do not water it consistently. So after I installed irrigation, I actually let it run for a minute or two in the morning and a minute or two in the afternoon, and that made the biggest difference to the quality of the plants that grew in my green stock. While this top watering system is the best that's out there in the market for vertical planters, it is still not perfect. And I find that in addition to the top watering, which comes from my irrigation system, I do need to come and water the pockets at least once every few days or so, or they do tend to dry out. And another thing, if you are planting seeds directly, you have to water the pockets. If you don't water the pockets, the top watering system is just not sufficient to reach all the way up to the top and make sure that those seeds are consistently moist. So yeah, if you're direct sowing, definitely water the pockets as well. Don't rely on the top system. Mistake number 8, not really staying on top of managing pests. I had a lot of issues with pests in my green stalks, particularly aphids. I grew the plants really close together, which is actually not uncommon for you to do in a green stalk. You grow them close together, but if you've got an aphid infestation and you're growing things like, say, strawberries, and you're growing a lot of plants, 3 plants in one pocket, the aphids will really decimate them. And if you have an ant problem on top of that, that is protecting those aphids, you might as well just give up, which is kind of what I did. I bought these green stalks to grow strawberries in them. I have yanked out all my strawberry plants and put them in my asparagus bed in a different part of the garden because I worked for 2 whole years trying to get a handle on the aphid issue. I just was not able to defeat the aphids. So I actually had an ant colony in one of my green stalks. I couldn't really get in and do anything about it. I had to eventually take that entire tier down, empty it out, and then refresh it and start over. So yeah, very difficult to manage pests like aphids in the green stock. Stay on top of it. Otherwise, they will get on top of you. All right, I'm going to go inside and continue filming this video tomorrow. It's getting really dark, but before I do that, let me ask you to please give this video a thumbs up if you're getting value from it. It really, really helps the channel. Thank you so much. We're back again. It's a new day, and we are on to mistake number 7. And that is planting too many plants that grow fairly large in the same tier. Let me actually show you what I'm talking about. So in these two green stalks on the left, I've got some fairly large plants that are creeping and trellising up. These are bottle gourds and ridge gourds and things like that. And I've got these really sturdy trellises that I put in this year. And if you want to know about how to build trellises, I've actually got a video where I talk about some DIY options. Anyway, I digress. But these plants obviously grow very large. In fact, this one has grown all the way to the top, and it has creeped onto the trellis of its neighbor, and so on and so forth. And this ridge gourd plant is growing actually in a leaf tier, and I come out here every single day and I water it in addition to the top watering thing. And that is because this little size container is too small to hold even one ridge gourd. I should have planted it in one of the original tiers. But even worse is if you plant another plant, say a watermelon or maybe a tomato plant in this same tier. Yeah, it's tempting because you've got different pockets. It feels like they're nice and isolated, but they are not. So if you're planting something that's going to grow as massive as this ridge gourd, or even if you're planting, say, a tomato plant or a couple of pepper plants, you can't really go more than that in a tier. I don't care if it's leaf or original, you can't plant more than one. And if you do want to plant something in the other petals, maybe some flowers, some basil, something that doesn't go very deep and take up a lot of resources. Mistake number 6, and I'm sitting on the ground here because I want to show you the base of this GreenStalk planter. Now, this one I actually bought a plant mover kind of thing from Amazon. Not very happy with that purchase because it's just not as good as the one that GreenStalk sells. I know that that's a little bit more expensive, but gosh, that moves so smoothly, it spins so smoothly, but I have this and it was a better deal. The problem though is that it doesn't move, like I said, very smoothly, and also it is sitting on this sort of cobbly surface here. And on top of that, there are these wooden pieces, kind of depressions that join these together, and that makes for a very uneven base. And what often happens when I spin this thing around with a great deal of difficulty is that the wheels, like you see right now, get into this groove, and that causes the GreenStalk to go ever so slightly out of balance. And that is a terrible thing because that completely messes up the irrigation system. So what I mean is that the GreenStalk is bending ever so slightly forward, and because of that, the water that is flowing from the top obviously is going kind of in this direction, and the pockets at the back, they dry out very quickly. So yeah, when you set up your GreenStalk, make sure that the surface at the bottom is perfectly stable and perfectly flat. Use a spirit level to make sure that there's no ups and downs. And as for this GreenStalk, when I redo it, when I amend the soil for the entire GreenStalk and refresh it, I'm actually going to put it on a stable base made out of concrete tiles or something like that, just so that it doesn't have to go through this situation again. Because I do have to come and frequently water the pockets because I noticed that the pockets at the back are drying out. Mistake number 5, not building sturdy enough trellises. Now, like I said, I've got a video where I've got some DIY trellises, but the DIY trellises that I've made in the past have only been able to handle sort of lightweight plants that don't grow too large. So cucumber plants, bean plants as an example. If you're planning to grow things like cantaloupes, watermelon, etc., you need good, sturdy trellises. In fact, I do not advise you to grow big fruit on these things. But even so, you can see with this ridge gourd, it is slanting and falling over. And this is a really sturdy trellis, but it becomes difficult, in fact impossible for me to turn this around because the plant has pulled the trellis over. Now I know that GreenStalk sells some trellises, and frankly, I think they need to come up with some better models, some sturdier trellises, but until that happens, do not grow very large plants if you don't have sturdy trellises. Mistake number 4. This is a good one. Planting plants with different watering needs in the same GreenStalk. Now, I learned this the hard way. I got my GreenStalk with the intention, like I said earlier, to plant strawberries in it, but I did not have enough strawberry plants, so I combined them with other plants like tomatoes and all kinds of plants. I didn't really consider the watering needs of the plants. What ended up happening was, because I was watering so frequently, because the tomatoes needed it or the cucumbers needed it, the strawberries were getting overwatered. And I ended up having the most tasteless strawberries. They just were so watered down. The same thing goes for herbs like rosemary. It does not require frequent watering, but mint does, and planting it in the same GreenStalk, just not really a good idea. So consider and plan the plants that you're planting in a GreenStalk to make sure that the watering schedule you're using will work for all the plants in the GreenStalk. Mistake number 3. And this one, I have to admit, I've made over and over again in spite of knowing that it's a terrible idea. And that is to try to move these monster GreenStalks full of soil, full of plants on your own. I don't care how smooth the surface is. Always have somebody help you with it to balance it out on the other side. I've dropped my GreenStalk at least 3, maybe even 4 times. And yeah, it was a lot of lost work trying to recover, rebuild, and I lost a lot of plants. So yeah, do resist the temptation of trying to move the GreenStalk. If you've got to move it from one place to another on your own, get somebody to help you. Mistake number 2. Skimping on the soil in the GreenStalk. Don't do it. Let me repeat that. Do not skimp on the soil that you put in the GreenStalk. You spend a decent amount of money to buy these things. They're not that cheap. And then, because you didn't really account for the fact that you've got to spend another $100 or so to get good soil to put in it, you try to go cheap. You get soil that just does not work for the GreenStalk. The GreenStalk needs really fluffy, lightweight, fertile, high quality soil. And I've actually got a video where I've got a DIY mix recipe for the GreenStalk, and I'll put a link to that at the end of this as well. But yeah, it is going to cost you some money to fill up this GreenStalk with soil. So when you buy a GreenStalk, or when you're planning to buy a GreenStalk, take into account the fact that you're going to spend between $100 and $150 potentially, depending on where you buy it from, to fill up this GreenStalk with soil. It can get expensive, but it is the difference between having success or not having success with your GreenStalk. Do not skimp on the soil. And finally, the number 1 mistake, not realizing how much I'm going to love these GreenStalks before I bought them. It can become an addiction. You buy one, and before you know it, you've got 5, and you're trying to figure out how you can get 6, 7, and 8. So absolutely love my GreenStalks, and I can't wait to do right by them again and stop neglecting them, because you know what? I love taking care of my GreenStalks. They bring me so much joy. And as I always say, everything grows better in the GreenStalk. All right, let's go and do some harvesting of those potatoes and see what we've got. The time has come. All right, I'm going to get in here with my hands, get them dirty, and get out some of the soil and see what's going on at the bottom of this GreenStalk. No potatoes yet. And the answer is, there aren't any potatoes in there. Oh well, that was a little bit of a rude surprise, but that's how life is. Let's get some other harvests going though. So this is something that I've actually been a little bit worried about. I've got some beets growing in here, and I was worried that they're actually going to crack the GreenStalk plastic, but it looks like they have grown out of the petal, so that's good. Wow, that's a heck of a beetroot. I'm going to pull this one out as well. This is not as large. I've never grown that big a beetroot in my entire life. This pepper is actually getting a little scalded, so I'm going to harvest this one as well. Some lovely longevity spinach. This is a nice hardy green that works very well in the place of spinach during the heat of summer. This ridge gourd is completely dry, so I'm going to take it inside. I'm going to need to get a scissors to grab that one. I've got a bottle gourd hiding in here. I'll probably give it another day or 2 before I harvest it. And some cute little piquine peppers. These are really hot peppers. These grew back from last year. I didn't plant them this year. I've got some lovely Thai basil here. Well, it's gotten dark again, but that's a nice little harvest that I got from my neglected green stalks. I hope you enjoyed the video, folks. And if there are any mistakes that you have made that you would love to share with the community so that we don't make the same mistakes, please do leave them in the comments below. Let's have a good discussion about these things. Until next time, live green and love your greens.